You doing all right? Raise your right hands, if you would, please. Raise your right hands. Turn to the person to your right and say, I don't care if Moss doesn't do sports. I want to talk sports. Raise your left hand. Turn to the person to your left and say, the Colts suck. Now turn to the person behind you and say, let's get this show on the road. Please welcome Mr. Joe Ellis.
Thank you, Greg. Big crowd. They must have been expecting Manning in this chair and Elway in that chair. Maybe.
Exactly. We were trying to find the little mask. That didn't quite work out for us. Let's talk sports first. You got a little game coming up on Sunday. Talking a little. Some owners like to talk a little smack in the media before the game. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add for it, other than I know I wake up every morning, along with a lot of people in this audience, probably thankful that Peyton Manning lives in our community and plays quarterback for the Denver Broncos.
There you go. Just a little bit about the process tonight. So I'm going to get the chance to ask Joe some questions. We will be opening it up to audience questions as well a little bit later on here, not too long down the road. So if you've got some questions, just keep those in mind and raise your hands high as we get to that portion of our program. But I want to dive in and talk a little bit about your background. As you heard in the video there, this is your 19th season with the Broncos, third as president of the organization, but you've been with the NFL for a very long time. So give us just a sense of your career path and how you got to where you are today.
Well, it's probably too long a story, but I was selling software rags, is what we call it, T-shirts and caps and things like that, like you buy at the bookstore or like you wear right here. I was selling those trying to sell them to the Denver Broncos ticket office gift shop in the old Mile High Stadium, for those of you that go back a ways. And I'd heard that they were looking for somebody to sell ads in their game day program, which in those days was a lot more important than it is today, because we have so many ways of getting information. But in those days, that was a real source of information for our fans. And that sounded like a fun thing to do. I'd always wanted to get into sports. So I volunteered my time, worked on a draw to get a commission, and as I got in there, gradually got more responsibility. It was a much smaller organization back in 1982 and 83 than it is today, obviously, and learned a lot, sort of felt I'd accomplished as much as I was going to accomplish in the short term, and decided to go back to business school. And for all of you that are in the audience that are doing that, from my standpoint, that was an undertaking well worth doing. So I did that, went to school in Chicago for 2 years at Northwestern, and came out of it and took a job near my hometown in Boston, Massachusetts for 2 years. And Pat Bolin called me and said, you know, the league office is looking for some people to assist that have team experience and come work in the league office in New York. And that interested me. I said I'd love to try and get back in. And it so happens that I ended up working for a guy who was on the fast track to the position he holds today, and that's Roger Goodell. So I worked directly for him for 9 years in New York, and I knew about a week or 2 weeks into it that he had his eyes on a job that he now holds. And, he's an ambitious guy, and I'm ambitious, but I knew that if I stuck with him and rode his coattails, we'd get a lot of stuff to do. And so we did a lot of things over those 9 years. We worked on international business. We worked on postseason operations and pricing and venues. We took responsibility for, under Commissioner Tagliabue's leadership, obviously, took responsibility for the expansion process in 1993. And for those of you that are NFL fans, the league went from 28 teams to 30. They expanded to Jacksonville and to Charlotte, now the Carolina Panthers. And what came out of that was this emergence of new stadiums in the league. And so that was a big initiative that I worked on for the remaining time that I was at the league office. And in July of 1998, working on stadiums, I came out here with Roger Goodell to help negotiate the lease that is now in place between the Broncos and the Stadium Authority.
Right.
And so at that time, I did that for about a month. I was traveling out here to stay for 3 or 4 days a week, go home, come back. And at the end of that, which we wrapped it up at I think about the first week of August, Mr. B offered me a job. And I've been here since, yeah. So very lucky.
Not a bad career path, selling ads to where you are today.
Right, very fortunate though. A lot of breaks along the way, which is what it takes in sports.
A lot of breaks too, but it takes a special kind of leader to hold the position that you have now. So just describe your leadership style.
Well, I mean, I think the most important things that I try to, Pat Bowlen told me something, and I'll never forget it, in 1999. We remember in 98, we won the Super Bowl. In 99, John Elway retired after that season. In 99, we weren't quite as good. We went 6-10, and it was early in the year. And, you know, I was kind of, I showed up in 98, we win a Super Bowl. I thought this is going to be the way it is every year, right? Not so fast. Haven't been back since. But he said, you know, Joe, I'll give you a lot of rope to do your job, but it'll be just enough to hang yourself if you're not careful. And, you know, I think that his lesson that he taught me was to empower people to do their work and talk a little and listen a lot. That, and I think the second thing is you know, Mr. Bowlen has also taught me this, and that is have fun with what you're doing at work, but take what you're doing at work seriously. And, you know, we have an obligation to all these people out here that are fans, this community, to serve them well and behave well and win games and all of that. But we ought to have some fun doing it internally. And so I encourage our people to have fun and
not too much
but
fun.
Never lose sight of the fact that what we do is serious business, because it's important to people.
We'll talk a little bit more about behavior and balancing the fun with what the responsibility is in the community in a minute. But 300 employees now. This is a huge organization, 20 different departments. You've got 2 different offices. You've got Dove Valley. You've got the stadium. I mean, how do you build a culture with that size of a staff and many different locations?
Well, you empower people and you make them feel good about what they're doing. You communicate. You know, we're in 2 separate spots. We have our football training facility down south. Yeah, it's called Dove Valley for those of you that, you know, listen to your station and hear what you call it when you're reporting from there. And then obviously we have a big entity at the stadium that runs the stadium not only for Bronco games but a lot of other events that we host there. But you know, the real goal is just to make sure everybody's in touch with what's going on. And we have an executive staff that's about 9 deep, and it's their jobs to filter down the information to everybody. You know, if there's one thing I don't do a good enough job of sometimes is getting down there and talking to the people at the stadium who, you know, who are detached from the football team, and just staying more informed and keeping them more informed, staying down there a little bit more and talking with them and things like that.
But one of the huge challenges you have, Joe, and let's be honest, I think I read it in the notes in preparing, you've got at any one time 50-plus millionaires walking around the halls.
Maybe a little more than that.
All right. I don't know too many places where you walk in and you've got
Maybe
50-plus millionaires walking around. And it's such a diverse group of people that you're trying to motivate and get all going in the same path.
Yeah,
How do you
but
do that?
everybody needs to be led and everybody needs to be stroked, and you know, they're all part of the same thing and the same goal. And you know, I think for so many fans, there's this great wow factor about pro athletes and pro coaches and all of that. But
Sure.
you know, they're just like the rest of us, and you know, we become sort of integrated as one family and share each other's good times and bad times and things like that. So you know, you don't notice it. I don't notice it as much when I'm in the building, and you know, but you bring guests in for a tour of the facility, and players are walking by and they're eating the same thing you eat and drinking the same thing you drink when, you know, in the cafeteria, and their eyes are wide open,
Sure.
and
But you can understand that.
you're sitting there going, I can't wait to get this lunch over with, and it's you know, so we get it ingrained in us, but on the outside it's not as on the outside it's much more of an exciting and fun thing. So, but we hold everybody together pretty well. We've got good, especially the football team. You know, John Elway and John Fox, really good, experienced, calm, collective
Sure.
leaders. They've done a great job.
You alluded to this just a minute ago, that there are, the management structure is somewhat unique for the Broncos compared to other teams. There are a lot of leaders in this organization, a lot. Many of them very high profile. So I'm just curious, how do you balance a very high profile owner, although, you know, very low profile at the same time, Pat Bowlen. You've got John Elway, you've got John Fox, you've got Joe Ellis. How do you get all those to fit together?
75% of that's some pretty big names, you know,
Yeah.
Bowlen, Elway, Fox. Right. The other guy starts to stay under the radar a little bit. But no, it's just all about honest communication, you know, and it's it's a high-powered, high-pressure business, and there are some confrontations that take place. But you know what? You got to work through those reasonably, and you got to do what's in the best interest of the team. And Pat Bowlen sets the tone for that, sets the standard, and you know, we're fortunate. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way in organizations in our business. You know, you get a lot of high-powered people with long egos. It can be difficult, but we're very fortunate right now to have two people running the football team, John Elway, John Fox, the coach, you know, that stay level-headed and understand what it takes to move things forward and in the right direction.
But you've heard this. I mean, there has been speculation and people out there kind of going, look, you've got a very high-profile executive VP of player operations, John Elway, who's got a little bit of a reputation here in town. And you've got you, the president of the organization, and the speculation is there's got to be some friction there. There's got to be something going on.
You know, there just hasn't been, and I don't think there will be, because what John brought is exactly what we needed. You know, we needed football leadership. We were coming off a year, and I'm sure plenty of you don't want me to rehash it, but we came off a year in 2010 where, you know, we had lost our way a little bit. And Pat recognized it, and we put together a plan to bring in somebody that would bring solid leadership, that was competitive, that was smart, that understood the business side of the game, which is really critical. And I'll be dead honest with you there, it makes my life so much easier, because often the two sides will be clashing against each other. Business has its objectives that it needs to fulfill. Football has one objective, right? And sometimes what business is doing doesn't marry up with what football thinks should be happening. But John has been terrific in dealing with that and understanding that. And you know, he brought a good business sense. He brought the competitive fire that he has as a person and as an athlete. There's nobody more competitive. He just brought a general understanding and common sense that's really kind of calmed everybody down and put us in a position for sustained success. You know, we're not, I know things are looking good right now. It's early. But you know, we're looking out 3 years, 5 years. Where are we going to be? How are we shaping the roster? And John does a really good job of, he's always looking at his board when I go into the office. And I can see he's visualizing about the team.
The player board.
Yeah, not at the player board, exactly, with the depth chart as it was. And I can see that he's thinking about the team and its collective parts, not only for this year, but the future. So it's made it very, very easy for Mr. Bowlen and myself.
So how do you define success?
Well, I mean, in pro football, it's two things. It's winning games, and you have to show these fans here and this community that at all times you're trying to do that. If you stop trying to do that, or it appears you stop trying to do that, they'll lose interest. They won't trust you, they won't have any faith in you, and they'll go away. They'll go watch someone else, or they'll pay attention to someone else. The other thing you have to do is you have to be good corporate citizens, good citizens in the community, as a franchise and as individuals. And we talked about this earlier when we were waiting to come out on stage, and that is, you know, everybody, whether it's me or it's someone in accounting or it's someone in any other department at the stadium or a player or a coach, we're all very visible to people. The minute we tell someone that we work for the Denver Broncos, they perk up. And it's as if the spotlight goes on you, and it doesn't matter who you are. So you have to carry yourself the right way. You have to earn and be able to keep their respect. And it's a challenge, you know, to do it all the time. I mean, you know,
And you don't always do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really behave that well all the time, you know.
I'm not talking about you, but there have been some high-profile arrests. No secret about that.
Right.
Both on the player side, even internally on your staff. Would you characterize that as a pretty big blow to the overall organization when that came out?
Yeah, you know, one is too many, and it happens frequently, and I think, unfortunately, a little more frequently to us than we'd like, obviously. People make mistakes. We try and correct them as quickly as we can, and certainly be as open and honest as we can in talking to the public about them. With all due respect, sometimes you have to be careful, you know, not to cross some legal boundaries as to when certain things happen. But, you know, those are things you just have to communicate honestly with the media and with the public. And, you hope the same mistake isn't made twice. That's really kind of the
Do you feel there have been
biggest thing.
enough lessons learned from what's happened here recently?
Wow, there should have been. I mean, we've had our issues, and the thing is, then we start playing games and people forget about these
Yeah,
things.
well, winning helps.
And so you have to have reminders, and you have to keep players aware and staff aware of certain things, and I think we do a good job. I know Coach Fox really does a great job of that with his players. He's really keen on and delivers a very good message to everybody about behaving themselves, I believe.
But you know this. Some people say that professional athletes are just not held to the same standard as most people would be, and that they should be, and that because they're in such high-profile roles and role models, there needs to be more action taken in this area. What do you say to
I
that?
would disagree with that. I think they are held to a high standard, and I think everybody in our organization is held to a higher standard, and I think we should be. Pat Bolin has said that this team is as much as anything is a public trust, and we have that obligation to behave ourselves accordingly. But I think players and coaches and executives and staff members are held to a very high standard, and I think the consequences of their actions often get played out in public, more so than perhaps in other companies in other industries. So I would disagree with that. I think because of the team we players play for and we work for, and the league that we represent, the National Football League, one of the most revered sports leagues in the world, I think the standards are very high.
Besides the legal issues that the team has faced, there have also been 3 player deaths in, I think, the past 4 years. I know for a fact, in covering some of these stories, that hit hard to a lot of people in your organization, as you would expect.
It does. It hits you very hard internally, when you have episodes, because we are a family, and everybody cares about everybody else, and our players, our coaches, our staff, they have the same emotions that anyone else would when something like that happens.
How do you push through that, and does it draw you closer together?
I think it does. We certainly you have to communicate openly and reach out to the family of the victims, which we did in all 3 cases. It's a tough thing to go through because a lot of players were grieving a different way, and it's something that it again gets played out in public, and it's not something that's ever happened when it happens. You know what I mean? So, like Darrent Williams was in I think it was New Year's Day of 2006. Well, that's the first time that anything like that had happened to anybody in our building. So, you just do the best you can and open up as many doors as you can to family members. We did that with Darrent's mother, and Coach Shanahan was very gracious about that. Ted Sundquist, who at the time was our GM, did a good job. And you just circle the wagons and get through very, very tough times. And it affects your organization. It does, and it lasts for a while.
And changes.
It does. It does. I mean, it changed. Darrent was a starting cornerback for us. The other young man that died, Darian Nash, he died of a heart attack. A lot of people probably wouldn't remember that. That was 3 or 4 months after. It can rock the world of a few people. And then Kenny McKinley, his unfortunate death, I think that took place in 2010. That rocked a few people's worlds.
Sure.
There were some players on our team who were very close to him. So it has an effect on your organization. That says life doesn't stop, the games go on, and here we are.
I want to switch gears a little bit and address some of the ethical issues that not only the Broncos are facing, but the entire league itself. Player safety getting a lot of attention right now, especially as it relates to head injuries and concussions. What's your take on that?
My take is Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the National Football League, has put this at the front of his list in terms of initiatives that he's dealing with, and he's been very aggressive with it. There are partnerships with the National Institute of Health, with General Electric and Under Armour. There is concussion legislation that is now in 49 states, which mandates high school and youth league coaches, your kid and my kids play, to go through, baseline testing, the educating about head injuries, and then the rules that are put in place to make the game safer, which a lot of people, I'm sure fans here, object to, and a lot of players voice objection to, because they're used to playing a game a different way. I was at a league meeting last week in Washington, D.C., and a fellow named Mark Murphy is the president of the Green Bay Packers, and he used to play safety for the Washington Redskins. And he said, I don't know if I could play today. He says the rules are that much different. To alter your game, it's a very hard position to play. Well, everybody's going to get used to playing it the way the rules are now set, and you notice it a little bit on the field now. You see some safeties backing off of some potential hits that could be very devastating. I think the league now is doing more and taking the initiative and taking the lead on doing more and more for injury prevention than any other sports league in the world.
So that's the health and safety aspect. What about players' retirement?
That too. The owners have, they've in the last collective bargaining agreement, they increased the funding for various player retirement programs. It's a tough profession for people. The average length of stay for a player is 3+ years, but if you can make it past year 4, it's actually about 7 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because then you're an established player on a team, and generally you can get to 7. But that's not a long time. Obviously, I mean, that's not a long time in our lifetime.
So you got to make your money up front.
So
you got to be
well,
smart
you do,
about it.
and you got to be smart about it, and that doesn't always happen,
Right.
And I think there's more we could be doing, and maybe we need to do. And I know the commissioner has looked at this with the union, and sometimes they don't marry up in collective bargaining discussions, but to educate players on saving money, and it's tough. But a lot of more guys do it now than don't. It's just you hear about the ones that don't.
Let's switch gears completely and talk about conflict resolution. You get a little bit of that in your business. Conflict resolution. And I want to run down some of the more
Fancy
prominent
term.
decisions that we've heard a lot about. Maybe Tim Tebow?
Conflict resolution, Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
Conflict. Well, we had a chance to bring in one of the game's greatest quarterbacks to play for us. Truly a remarkable player. And John Elway had a tough decision to make. And he looked at it and he thought he made the decision that was in the best interest of our football team, the Denver Broncos. And I am one who believes that he did do that. But that was a hard decision. Here was a guy that gave so many people hope and who showed all the right characteristics and all the right traits, both on and off the field, and really lifted us up. And this isn't that far back, so fans will remember the 2011 season where he came on to start. We won 6 straight games. We faltered a little bit at the end, but still managed to win the division, and then had this tremendous playoff win against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where we won on the first play of overtime. And it lifted everybody up in the community and all of our fans and everything. So, I think all of us feel a real debt of gratitude to Tim and all that he did here. It's disappointing to see it hasn't worked out since then, but these are decisions that football people are paid to make, and they're pressure decisions. And I know John he wasn't sleeping well during those times, but he felt that he had to go make a decision that was going to be in the long-term interest, the best interest of the club, and it's worked out well.
Jay Cutler,
new coach, young general manager, trying to set a new way, and Jay was a young quarterback at the time, and I just think things got, the only way that conflict got resolved was for one of them to move on. Jay's had a good career with Chicago. He's a good, hard-nosed, tough player and a good, flamboyant, really fun quarterback to watch. Hindsight 2020, I don't know how Josh McDaniels or anybody would have felt about it, but it was a decision based on where things were from a personal standpoint, what Josh was trying to do, what I think Jay wanted to do. It was time for him to move on, so he was traded.
You segued nicely. Let's talk about Josh McDaniels. That was a tough time for this club.
Listen to these people.
Josh McDaniels. Y'all remember Josh McDaniels?
I thought you were going to skip over that.
I'm not going to skip over Josh because I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we gave. Remember talking to Pat about this. We didn't give him the help or the resources that he needed to succeed, and it just didn't work out. It was probably a little too soon, and he's gone back. He's now back with the Patriots. Right. When things don't work out, you've got to act quickly. and you can kind of hear the noise. So I always hear people in sports, they say, don't listen to the noise. Well, you can hear the noise, And I remember we played St. Louis, and this is another thing I learned when I was at the league office. I remember Wellington Mara. He's a great guy, owner of the New York Giants, and we were sitting around having lunch, and I was just a staffer at the league office, and I was just listening and taking it all in. It was really fun. And he turned to Dan Rooney, I think it was, an owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Giants were having a bad year, and he says, Danny, when they start voting with their feet, it's time to make a change. And what he meant is when the fans are leaving the stadium early during a game, you better start thinking about where your franchise is headed, and we could kind of see that coming. We had lost to Oakland really badly earlier in the year, and then we had a home game against St. Louis. We had we had an ugly episode where a rogue employee shot some videotape of an insignificant practice when we played in London, and things were just spiraling the wrong way. So when it's time to act, and Pat Bowlen made the right decision there, and you apologize for it, and you move on, and you fix it.
John Fox has done quite well. It has changed the culture, at least from what it seems on the outside. It seems like it's just what the club needed at the right time. What has it meant?
And on the inside, really energetic, fun guy. I mean, when I talked earlier about, have fun with what you're doing, I really like the way Foxy conducts his business in the building, and I think the players do too. He has the command and respect of the players. One of the things I've noticed when I listen to him in meetings, he's a very, very clear communicator. The players know exactly what is expected of them. There's no gray area, and he never waffles on that. And I think it's one of the reasons why week in and week out his teams play very, very consistently for him. So, he's been a breath of fresh air, and we're lucky to have him.
Do you call him Foxy in these meetings?
Patrick does, our PR.
Okay, Patrick does.
All right, I call him Coach Fox.
Coach Fox. This guy, Peyton Manning, big deal.
Big deal.
Big deal for this team and this franchise, and it certainly has set the tone for the next couple of years.
One of the most popular athletes, and not only in the sport, but in professional sports. You said it earlier, rising tides lifts all boats, and he just elevates everybody in the building, and I think it's just because of his passion, his commitment to the team, commitment to everything in the building.
Well, he's one of the most intense guys you'll ever meet. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah, tremendous, an enormous capacity for concentration.
Yeah.
A lot of these people are running out of gas already. Manning he's dialed in all the time. Peyton is, and he is just so committed to winning and doing everything the right way, and his attention to detail. Everything matters to him, and when his teammates see that, or all of us in the office see that, or the coaches see that, we're going to work a little extra harder ourselves. So
what do you
it's been a wonderful experience for us.
What do you talk about when you sit across from Peyton Manning? When he's not
I leave him alone most of the time.
That's a good thing.
He doesn't need me interrupting his day or his routine. But no, he's very personable, very, he's a very gracious guy. He's got a lot of class, a lot of grace, and anybody here, I'm sure some of the fans here have interacted with him, some of the people here, and they know what I'm talking about.
Well, you know my history. I go back to the Manning family in New Orleans, and so Archie Manning days.
Right.
The family's very, very well
The first
respected.
family of football.
For sure.
Yeah.
The only reason why you go to a Saints game for many, many years. How many of you have your smartphones with you right now? Hold those up. Yeah. So moving on to our next topic here, and it's the fan experience. Connectivity is the name of the game in just about every business these days. You have invested a lot of money in boosting up what you can offer fans and the whole fan experience.
Well, that's because they got to have it, or else they'll be screaming at you on Mondays, and that's the way it's been for the past 3 years. We're getting a little bit better at it. We've, as you said, invested a bunch of monies with various carriers to upgrade digital antenna systems and wireless and all of that.
This is
I have found, I do it a lot. My brother texts me like 70 times a game. It's so annoying, but last year the good thing was I didn't get him till I got home. Now, I get the Oakland game. I was sitting next to Mr. Bowlen at the Oakland game, and normally he's just watching the game like this with his binoculars. And I figure, well, he's not watching me look at my phone, my mobile phone. And about halfway through the first quarter, he says, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, my brother keeps texting." So my point is, the reception in the stadium is a lot better. And that's really a good thing for fans, because everybody that goes to a game, if you go to a game, you want to take a picture and you want to text it out right away. Here, I'm sitting in section 104, or, here's Peyton Manning down on the field, and I'm here and you're not, and that kind of stuff, So all that, and you've got Facebook posting, and you've got Instagram. Are you on Instagram?
I am not.
Okay. You got to get on Instagram.
I'll get there.
Instagram's great. So there's all of that going on, and we got to be able to provide that for people.
No.
And then we've increased, obviously, our video experience and the sound system. For those of you that have been to the stadium, it's far better with the HD screens. We finally got rid of the antiquated, box televisions and have gone to flat screens. We're catching up. And then we improved the concourse area down in the 100 level. For anybody that's been to our stadium or has seats in the 100 level, the whole concourse area used to be sort of a dark, dungy warehouse, and we've kind of livened that up a little bit.
Your target markets, which you have identified as sort of big growth potential, women, youth, the Hispanic market as well.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the league is good at assisting us with initiatives, and then we take them locally. We got a long way to go. I think a lot of teams get caught up in the relationships that they have with season ticket holders and club seat holders and suite holders and sponsors, and forget about all the other customers that are there. And so, and you have to pay attention to your core customers. So some of that's understandable, but I think we're doing more to reach out to women and more to reach out to the Hispanic community. The league has some great initiatives with Hispanic Heritage Month, and you see a lot of the apparel, but ads towards the women. I don't know if you've seen those, Greg, or not, but
I have.
they're good
Yes,
ads.
I'm wearing some female apparel right now. I'll go into that later.
Too much information.
Sorry.
But anyway.
We'll put that on Instagram perhaps later.
No, we had an event the other night, Crush Night Out. 1,200 women. We had players doing an equipment what do we call that? An equipment exhibit, if you will,
okay.
and we served liquor at the event.
Yes.
So it was a rambunctious evening, but there's things like that that we continue to do, and we continue to grow it.
Well, 24,000 season ticket accounts, 71,000 total seats. That's what I think about 94% of capacity.
77, actually.
77,000.
71,000 out of the 24,000 accounts. A little more than that.
I'm doing my math right. 99.5% of these accounts were renewed last year. You've been a sold out, as we heard in the video, 44 consecutive years. That dates back to 1970.
Stunning.
It is.
Stunning.
Is there any other team in the league that has that kind of record? And what kind of partnerships does it take to build that and make it successful?
Well, there are other teams that have that kind of length of a couple others, but not many. I mean, we're at the top. When we were doing a little media work back here, and I was done with you, and I think it was the DU paper came to me, and they asked the question, "What's the thing that surprises you the most?" And I guess I'm always stunned by the never-ending and overpowering support that this community gives our football team. It's astonishing to me, and because there's plenty of stuff to do around here. And there's plenty of things to do in Colorado, and so we're asking you for a significant amount of your discretionary income to come support us and watch our games. And you have done it through good times, and you have certainly done it through bad times, but you have never wavered in your emotion and your passion and your support of the team. And, every time someone in our office or myself or anybody takes it for granted, I always catch myself on that, because it just continues to astonish me and amaze me that there's this much support. We're in the 18th largest market in the country. We have maybe us and Phoenix has the most saturated sports market in the country, on a per capita dollar basis. And to have 76,000 people come to our games every Sunday or Monday night or Sunday night, whatever, is truly remarkable. And we're very, very lucky.
We're going to open it up to audience questions here in just a moment. But my last question for you, and it's sort of more of a personal question, is that this is an intense game. It's an intense industry. I don't have to tell you that. How do you balance all of this? Your personal life, the work life, being on the spotlight all the time. What's the secret to that?
You got a great wife. I think she's here.
Is she here?
I don't know. I think so.
Oh, there she is right there. Stand up.
There she is.
There she is.
Who's done a better job than the father of our 3 kids has done. No, I mean, that's the easiest thing. It's just I've had a great family, and if she's put up with me for 23 years, and these people have put up with me for 55 minutes, imagine 23 years. That's the key thing, I think, is just because during the season, you're distracted all the time. There's always something going on. Sure. And I can't really explain, but it's always different things. People are coming at you for different things. Different problems arise. Everything gets magnified. Someone's always asking you for tickets, things along those nations, So I find myself looking at my smartphone at 2 a.m, which has a very bright light, and wakes up my companion, and she's not very happy about it. But once we get past the season, and I try and spend as much time with them as I can, and then recreate and try and do something exercise-wise to stay in a modicum of condition.
How's that working for
you? In and out.
Okay.
In and out.
We'll
Some days better than others, but
I understand.
there is balance to it. It's just hard sometimes to attain it because it's such a highly exposed business.
Sure.
You always feel like you're on call, and you're always worrying about something because it's very, very public.
Let's open up for questions. We have a microphone down.
Yep, we're over here. Greg, over to your right.
Whoop.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Season ticket holder since 1974, so glad to be here. But I would like to know, you said when things are not working well, you are quick to take action. But what is the single best thing you feel in your gut as far as leadership when you know things are working well? What's the best thing you can tell that you can feel when you know it's right?
That's a good question. The reason I'm struggling with the answer is because I'm always worried about what happens next. And you never know in our business, because I don't know what the outcome of Sunday night's going to be. So as soon as we get through with a victory, like we did last Sunday, you start wondering what's going to happen next, or what's going to happen next weekend. The Chiefs are 6-0. So from a football standpoint, things are working well, but that can change like that. You look at some of the struggles. Let's just pick a team, and I'm not picking on them. I'm just pointing out. The Houston Texans were supposed to have a terrific year. They're off to a rocky start. They can fix that, and I don't like to speak for them. That's not fair, but those kinds of situations pop up all the time in sports, which makes it, it's why people pay attention to it and watch the games live and everything, because you don't know what the outcomes are going to be. So, right now, I can tell based on, you can sense when you have good camaraderie and good, Pat Bolin calls it esprit de corps in the building, and everything's going your way. But you got to guard against getting too comfortable with that. You got to, John Fox uses the phrase understate and overproduce. And so, that's kind of what we try and do each and every week.
Great.
Next one's from up there.
All right, in the back middle section, I think, yes.
Joe, thanks for being here. You've got some phenomenal experience around the NFL at very high levels. Of course, you've been around some phenomenal leaders, John Elway and now Peyton Manning, and certainly John Fox and Pat Bolin. What is it that you see about the chemistry of leadership with those guys? And then what is it that Peyton Manning does to take that to a whole new level? What is it that makes Peyton be such a phenomenal leader, and the chemistry that he brings? It must be kind of, in a sense, beyond words.
Well, I said earlier about how he raises everybody's level. I think his attention to everything, his attention to detail, his concentration, and his, how he outwardly exhibits how important and how much everything matters to him in preparing for games, practices. I mean, our practices are intense. They are intense sessions, and he's been in this league. How many years are we now? 15, 16? I've lost count. I mean, every practice matters. And preparing for every game is important. And attending the team meetings and not goofing around in them, that kind of an example that he sets, it's astonishing. And everybody senses it, everybody sees it, and so they take his lead, And as I said earlier, John Fox, with his direct communication, which is very clear and very understandable, there's no gray area at all, I think combined, with Peyton's leadership, and then the other leaders that we have on the team. I see a guy like Wesley Woodyard stepping up and being a great leader of our defense right now, and young guy Chris Harris, 25, playing real well. They take their craft seriously, and they try and improve on how they're performing each and every week. And I guess that gets back to your question. When you see that happening, you can sense that things should go your way. You should perform well. So, it's raised our expectations. It's raised everybody's expectations that is a big fan of ours. So, this is a good position to be in.
Great.
Okay, right here.
So your industry is actually one of the highest turnover in terms of personnel, both players, management team, and coaching staff. What are some of the tips and tricks that you might have to pass on in terms of hiring and firing? And how do you find the right individual and, more importantly, be able to cut the wrong individuals in some semblance of time?
Well, from a football standpoint, I wish John Elway were to answer your question. It's tough. You want to try and develop players and have them come along, and sometimes that doesn't work out, and you have to make hard decisions. You have 90 guys that show up for training camp, and only 53 get to stick around. Then you can bring 8 back for a practice squad. But those are hard decisions. It's really the toughest part of the business, because a lot of these players have put their heart and soul into football throughout their lives, and in many cases that ends it. In terms of coaches and executives and whatnot, in the interview process, the one thing I would recommend, and we did this last time with John Fox, is to hire an outside consultant that has a certain expertise in psychological tendencies, how a guy's going to behave, how he's going to perform under pressure. You can ask the right questions. Or that person could. And we had a guy that did that, and it was very helpful to understand the complete package of characteristics that the 4 candidates that we interviewed, or 5 maybe, were bringing to the table. So, and not a lot of teams in sports do that. The owner gets in the room with a few of his key lieutenants and sizes someone up and hires them. And I think the business is a little bit, there's a little bit more demand from everybody that's a fan here for great performance consistently, and so you better make the right pick, or you better do everything you can to make the right pick when choosing someone like that.
So that's interesting. I just have a quick follow-up. So did you use a specific psychographic testing tool?
Psychographic?
We'll talk, it's a big word.
That is a big word.
Sorry. What kind of test?
No, we used a guy.
Like that. All right, we got the guy. We'll go to the next question.
He was a good guy.
He was a good guy, too.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a very good
Greg,
tip.
you're up here.
Okay, we'll come back in the front here in just a minute, but up in the back middle somewhere, yes.
Hi. We know that football is a big business. You admitted it. But this business is a little bit different in the sense that most businesses, the bottom line is dollars and cents. In this business, you've got 2 different bottom lines, so to speak. On the football side, you want to win. Then you also have to make money. How do you reconcile when those 2 things conflict?
Well, I think one follows the other. And if you remember what the earlier remark I made about you got to show everybody in here and all our ticket holders and constituents that you're doing everything you can to win. I think that goes a long way. Pat Bolin's never worried about the bottom line. You know, he's worried about winning. He has told me over and over and over, my legacy will be defined by Super Bowls. And he's been to 5, he's won 2. You know, so while sometimes one may be going well and the other isn't, generally, from what I've seen, you know, ours, one follows the other, and we consistently try and put the best team on the field, and sometimes we aren't successful. Sometimes things happen. You have a bad year. You know, you just got to take it next year and try and improve and do the best you can. But I've never seen a situation where a bottom line is flourishing and a team isn't doing well and isn't showing, or at least showing people that they're trying to do well, if that makes sense. So I think you really, I said it earlier and I've said it here again and I'll say it one more time. You better show people that you're trying to win in pro sports.
Right here.
I know you said you worked in the league office, and this is more of an NFL-specific question, but what are your thoughts on the role of public financing in relation to the financing of NFL stadiums and what role the public government has to play in building those stadiums?
Well, when I worked in the league office, I went around the country and traveled from city to city and tried to, and was successful to validate the role of public funding and why it was important. And the economic models of the team need the assistance of the public to build the venues that are necessary to put on the sport. And there are plenty of people that disagree with public funding, and I understand that. You know, here we had a public-private partnership. Pat Bolin put in it was 75-25, I think, and I think in fairness to Pat, he put in a little north of 25% of the costs. You know, I think teams are important to communities. It's a judgment call on behalf of the communities. They get to vote on these referendums and they get to decide. And it's often done with a lot of hand-wringing, and I respect that and understand that. But you know, in general, what happened in the mid to late 90s and then into the early part of the 2000s was you know, it was put to the hands of the voters, and the voters decided that having an NFL team in their city and supporting it in the form of building a building in which they could become the tenant was important, and that having those teams in their cities and in their communities was important to the overall image and social fabric of the communities. And so they voted them in, and the league has had great success, and so have other leagues. We're not the only one. We're very fortunate for that. We don't take it for granted. It's an ongoing debate. In California, they're having a tremendous struggle trying to build stadiums. And California has a litany of struggles as a state. I understand that. So it makes sense that it's, as financially that was. It makes sense that debate continues, and it's harder in some areas to do it. But, you know, we were very fortunate. I know Pat Bolin doesn't apologize for it. He's promised the citizens, and I think he's delivered, that he'll do everything he can to try and get a Super Bowl winner each and every year.
So just a quick side note on that issue. When the debate was going about public financing for the new stadium, the city had a series of town hall meetings. And at the Denver Chamber, I'll never forget this, she was probably about 85 years old. And she was sitting next to me, and we're covering the story. And she said, "Young man, I'd like to get up to the podium and say a few words." And I said, "Well, absolutely, let me help you." So I helped her up to the podium, and Mr. Bolin is up there. And I don't know if you were there or not. I don't know if you were, but it was,
don't recall.
Yeah, big team members. And she gets up to the podium, and she's a very sweet lady. And I'm helping her and kind of steadying her a little bit. And she goes, "Excuse me, Mr. Bolin, why are you screwing me?"
What was his answer?
He looked at me because he thought that I put her up there, and so he didn't talk to me for years. So I hope he's forgiven me. I think he has. We've talked since then. All right, another question down. Can we come?
In the middle.
Then we'll come down to the front. Yes. Question back there. Yes.
Hi, so you mentioned that in your career path you had a lot of great breaks that allowed you to get to where you are. And I'm sure that as you look for additional management, you always want the best. That being said, as you look for the best, and I'm sure agnostic in gender and race, how do you support and how are you aware of supporting women specifically within management?
How are we supportive of women's within
And
management?
Women in the management field. I don't know your entire org
no, we've
chart.
our most recent hire to our senior executive staff is which was desperately needed, was a very, very qualified individual, Nancy Svoboda, to be our Senior Vice President of Human Resources. And she has come as a great aid to not only the business side, but the football side. Since she got here, her eyes were opened wide. She arrived in July, and lots of stuff has happened, some of it very publicly played out during that time period. But no, it's an open field. We've had Cindy Kellogg has done a terrific job for us on the community development side. We have Sandy Young, who assists our media partners, doing a great job. There's, the growth part of it is as Pat Bolin says, you got to empower people, give them the ability to have the courage of their convictions, and we've been very, very lucky to have some great women working for us, and that's expanding. Good.
Let's write down here. Right.
How's it going?
Great. What
I'm
happened?
I got a couple stress fractures.
Bummer.
Yeah. So I'm Nick Stubler, and I'm a sophomore here at the University of Denver. So in today's world, there's like an ever-growing emphasis on social responsibility. And I was wondering what your organization has done to become more sustainable, and then what sustainable initiatives you guys have going into the future.
Sustainable initiatives towards social responsibility.
And just the environment
And the environment.
just sustainability.
And the environment. Well,
Going
the
green.
stadium is green. No, I think we've got. I think we ranked like in the top 6 in terms of stadium being green and all the recycling and all the various programs that are in place. The big thing that we've looked at with Excel is how we could do some stuff for solar in our parking lots. I'm not sure our fans want to turn the parking lots into a solar field, but you can actually put, solar panels up and have that be covered garage. So theoretically, right? And we've looked at that. Aesthetically, we've got to figure out where it would best fit and whatnot, but there's some opportunities there for us. The league in general, I think, has done some good things around the Super Bowl and some of their postseason events that they host. But it's ever evolving, as you know, and we can do better. That's for sure.
Okay.
We're going to go right here.
Over here.
Over the years, I've seen some players get involved in domestic matters, traffic matters, et cetera. And lately we had a matter where somebody didn't go to court. Why can't you put some type of a clause into their contracts that they report to you when they get themselves in a little bit of a jam, perhaps help them with representation, and also put a little tickler there so that when they're supposed to be in court, they go to court?
Contracts are agreed to, standard form contracts are collectively bargained and agreed to, so I don't think we could insert any clauses into contracts. That doesn't prevent us from telling them exactly what you just said. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't follow through on their responsibilities and their obligations, and we get trapped by that. There's some internal discipline that takes place that people don't hear about, and we do the best we can to. And I got to say, John Fox calls it the 3% rule. Generally, 97% of the players understand exactly what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to behave, and they do so. Eventually, things happen, and you're right. We've had a couple of instances where, the irresponsible behavior took place. You address it. Whatever discipline is handled that you can do internally, you take, and you just hope it doesn't happen again. But in terms of actual contract language, there's some pretty stiff and strict requirements that were collectively bargained and agreed to prevent us, I think, from putting in some hard language.
But what kind of morals clauses? Do you have morals clauses in these? I'm not familiar with
There are some, yeah. There's some certain responsibilities, and some of that falls under that. But generally, larger infractions, and I'm not dismissing those infractions, but larger infractions come into play in terms of recapturing monies and things like that.
Okay.
Here.
We'll come into the back. Now, if I can, you have been so, I know, you've been so patient. Can you just stand up? Give her a round of applause for how patient she has been.
Why don't you ask your question, and then I'll repeat it?
Yes.
How about that?
We'll come to the back in a minute. What is your question?
I became disabled. I've had 3 surgeries in the past 5 months. So I'm speaking on behalf of the disabled as a woman. Will I be intimidated to come to the stadium if I take the light rail, walk me through it? And I also want to make something funny, like I am a graduate of Daniels, but I did have a dumb brunette moment because I was at King Soopers, and I asked the manager why nobody was at King Soopers. I thought there was a dirty bomb that was blasted in Denver. It was a Bronco game. So
All right.
Okay.
For those of you who could not hear that question, so she didn't quite realize why she went grocery shopping on a Sunday. There was nobody in the grocery store at King Soopers. But the question itself is a very good one. It is, you have recently become disabled, and you would like to go experience the fan experience at the stadium and take in a game. You would like to use the ladies'
The answer
restroom?
is yes.
Yes.
It is fully ADA compliant,
Very
and
good.
so you'll be able to get off the light rail train like you normally would, and then you'll come across the bridge and you'll go up the ADA ramps, and you'll go to the ticket office, and we have ADA seating, and you can at that time you can, if you probably will have purchased an ADA ticket before the game starts.
Make sure you ask for one of
and
those,
you
too.
can, you'll
They'll
be able to
help you through.
validate your condition, and you get some of the best seats in the house,
Right.
by the way. If whether you have to be shaded from the sun or kept warm, or just need space for your chair or whatever it is,
You look
all of that
very
is
happy at that response.
all of that is provided.
Yes, that's awesome. Yes,
And
call
that's
the ticket
required.
office.
That's required by law.
Yeah.
So.
But the Broncos have gone over and above a little bit on that too. I will tell you, your ticket office folks are great. We did a story of that. So
And
call
if
the
you have
ticket
any
office.
problems, ask for Patty Barbin. She's the best. I mean it. When it comes to assisting ADA customers, just terrific.
Tell them Mr. Ellis sent you. Okay. Who's up here? Yes.
Hi. In light of the It'll Get Better campaign and the changing world and Ellen DeGeneres, and can you ever imagine a National League football player being openly gay? Could that
Sure.
happen? Would it? How would that happen?
It would just happen, you know? It would just be. And for all I know, that exists. I don't know, and you know, I don't view that as an issue at all.
Right here.
Good. Yes.
You've identified a lot of the reasons that the Broncos are such a successful organization, starting with an owner that's committed to winning. He hires and puts in place great people with leadership characteristics, and it trickles all the way down. How would you fix the Rockies?
Yes.
Oh, that's a mean question. You know, I mean, I like Dick Montfort. He's a good friend, and listen, they're going through their struggles, and let's see, 2007 they were in the World Series, and then made the playoffs in 2009, and they've had a down period, and I'm rooting for them. I can't. Their business is their business. I love what they do. I love going to games. I love the park. I love the atmosphere in downtown Denver when there are baseball games. So do a lot of people. I'd love to see them win. I grew up in a baseball town. I grew up in Boston. There's nothing more fun than a team that's contending for a pennant in September. And we've experienced that here a couple of times. It's just been a while. So I'm rooting for them to get better. I think when all our teams in Denver perform well, it helps us all as organizations. I really do. So I'm rooting for them.
Good. All right.
Right here. Two more.
Two more questions. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Stelios Cabrera. I'm the professional program here. So with reported revenues at $9.5 billion last year, and Commissioner Gondal looking to push the number to 25 $25 billion by the end of the decade. How do you see the league and teams bridging that gap?
Bridging the gap between 9 million and 25, 9 billion and 25 billion. Man, that seems like a tall order. That's why he's the commissioner and I'm not. I know he's got his eyes on expanding content in both television and what we call the digital platform. And I haven't, and I don't think we at the Broncos have figured out a way to monetize the digital platform. We have all kinds of apps and all kinds of fun things you can do on your smartphone, on your tablet, on your computer, on your laptop, whatever. But there's growth there. There's no question, and smarter people than I are in the process of figuring it out. The hard thing is that changes every day. And so you're always kind of playing catch up. Internationally, there's growth to be had. You hear a lot of talk, for those of you that read about our league, about a franchise in London. Those are big ideas, and maybe there are franchises in other international markets someday. I'm trying to figure out the logistics of traveling to and from games and time zones and all that kind of stuff, which is hard on players, but that's certainly out there. The game is, I think the hard thing is to balance how much is too much for all of you that are great fans. But the way things are going, you can't seem to get enough of it, And I'm not a proponent of the 18 games. Mr. Bolin was for a while. I think he's kind of backed off on it. I think that's hard on players. Someday maybe you expand the postseason a little bit, add a team or two. The big thing is, though, to back to it, is kind of video and digital content that's out there that could keep people captivated. This recent league meeting, just a matter of a single thing on content, they made it mandatory for teams to have to be on this show called Hard Knocks. I'm sure some of you have watched it on HBO. It's pretty fascinating television. I think you'll see more things like that. Don't tell our coach I said that. He's not a big fan of Hard Knocks. But you'll see more things like that in the future. We do some things. We do shows with you. We do shows with some of your competitors, some lifestyle shows and all this stuff, and shows on Comcast that we have. People watch this stuff, and it evolves into some additional revenue generation. And that's kind of where our business is going. How that gets from 9 billion to 25 billion, I'm not the mathematician that can figure that out.
All right.
Okay.
We have time for one
Last one.
more question. And you, my friend, are the lucky winner.
Hi. You're saying that loyalty is one of your most important assets, and at the same time, football is the industry with one of the highest turnover rates, right? So would you ever consider going to work for another team? If so, what would it take?
Work for another team? No, listen, when, the loyalty thing that you're talking about is when players, leave, right? That's essentially it, and are released from the team. And that's the hard part of the business. Players are well compensated to play in our game, and they should be. They certainly should be, because they are the ones that are putting on the show. They're the performers. But you as fans expect nothing but the best out of our team each and every week. And so we have an obligation to put the best players and the best coaches out there. And so hard decisions get made that affect people's lives, players, coaches, et cetera. I think our model's pretty good. I think our sport is tough. Injuries are tough. It's a very, very tough game. And, I was talking earlier, we see injured players come through the chow hall and stuff, and it's really hard on them psychologically to be injured because they don't know if they're going to make it back to the field. They don't know if they'll get their job back, and so it's a tough thing to balance. There's no question about it. But I love the way our sport performs. I wouldn't want to work in any other sport. Where we play games once a week. You all don't have to keep up with us Monday through Friday, right? You can just focus on that game on Sunday. and then you can read about what's coming up next week, and you can, the crescendo kind of builds, and it happens 16 times during the year, and then there's postseason, and of course the Super Bowl. And so I think that's an advantage that our league has, the suspense and the build-up. It's a great platform, and I feel very lucky to be in the sports league I'm in.
So baseball's definitely out for you. I just want to.
Probably.
All right.
I don't think baseball.
Final
needs me.
word, Joe. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, I don't worry about my legacy. I worry. The one thing I'd like to see happen before I left, or Pat Bowlen kicked me out the door, would be to have us win the AFC Championship. I mean, we want to win the Super Bowl every year, and that's the ultimate goal, is to hold that trophy up as many times as you can. And it's hard to do. It's very hard to accomplish. But the last time we won the AFC Championship game at home was in Mile High Stadium. And then we had a difficult transition for some fans who had fallen in love with that old stadium into a new stadium where their seats were slightly different, and they didn't know the neighbors around them that they were sitting with, and it was kind of a tough transition for a lot of fans. And we had to endure that, and our team had gone through a stretch, it has gone through a stretch where we'd made the playoffs a few times, but we really weren't advancing to the levels that the fans expected. And to be able to host an AFC Championship game, which we've done once in the building but did not win in 2005, and then actually win it, I think that would be that'd be very satisfying, just because I think our fans, our season ticket holders that have supported us through thin and thick and a lot of thin, I think that'd be a nice reward for them. They deserve that.
This year would be a great year to do that. Joe Ellis, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. Greg, if I can, I just want to thank Denver University for inviting me to speak here. Pat and Annabelle Boland have been big supporters of DU. I think they have contributed to this building. The sundial is on the south side is thanks to their contribution. They've contributed largely to some of the one of the facilities over in the athletic center. And I think Mr. Boland's most passionate civic cause has been DU. He really enjoyed his time. He was a trustee here. So I want to thank those of you from Denver University that had us out, had me out tonight. I know Pat is happy that I'm here, and I appreciate your audience tonight. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.